Hello, welcome to the third talk in a series, Genesis, the first 3 chapters. We've looked at verse 1, in the beginning God, and God went on to create the heavens and the earth. But when we get to verse 2 of Genesis chapter 1, we find that it's described as formless, empty and dark. It's a desolate picture. In fact, with no light, there's no picture at all. It really is bleak, chaotic, nihilistic. How might we describe that? It's a sort of becoming state, an evolving state. Before order, before fruitfulness, before light. As the creation story unfolds, God goes on to separate elements out, to classify kinds of his creation. He goes on to create order and to define boundaries. And after the human creation, we see that human beings are also drawn into that same process. As stewards, we too are to act, to rule, to bring order, structure, to subdue the earth. And in chapter 2, humans are also drawn into this whole process of labelling the creation. There is in physics a basic law. It's called the second law of thermodynamics, and it covers whole systems, including the universe itself. And basically has this to say: unless an external agent acts upon a system, order will dissipate into disorder. It will collapse into disorder. Let me give you a few examples. A hot body will dissipate its heat so that it cools down. The energy is lost. Or if you get two comparable gases or liquids, meeting together, brought into contact with each other, they will lose their particularity, their identity, as they merge, they integrate together. And so what we find is that the orderliness, the orderly state, is lost into disorder. But God moves as that external agent in the early universe to bring order from chaos, light into darkness, and from sterility to fruitfulness. Human beings also can engage in those processes. For instance, we use electrical, mechanical, chemical engineering methods to produce orderliness where there is a chaotic state. It's a bit like when my grandchildren visit the house. After they've left, I have to act upon the house to restore it to some degree of semblance of order. Let me give you another example of the way human beings do this. For instance, if we excavate ore, and from that ore we try to extract metal, then what we do is we heat it up and we separate out the dross from the required metal. God injects fruitfulness and light and order into that formless, empty darkness. That's also a picture of the way God's Holy Spirit can act within the lives of Christ's disciples. I want to read you a verse, John chapter 14, verse 27. And in this, Jesus is speaking, and he says to his disciples the following: "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." So Jesus starts by saying, my peace I give to you. It's a unique peace. It has a quality which cannot be replicated anywhere else. And I give you that peace. A common Jewish greeting. And in that greeting, that word shalom is not merely the absence of conflict. It's actually wishing on the other something positive. Wholeness, order, completeness, well-being. God still brings order out of chaos. If you turn to Mark's Gospel and the opening chapters, remembering that Mark's Gospel is recording the memoirs of Peter, in those early chapters you find many miracles performed by Jesus. So, for instance, many healing miracles where very sick people, desperately sick people, are brought to him, or he encounters them and he brings healing. Or nature miracles, where a storm is stilled instantaneously at his word of command. Or in the spirit realm, he will cast out evil spirits, as with those which went into the pigs and went over the cliff face. And even power and authority over death itself. He visited the home of that Jewish synagogue leader, Jervis, and was able to raise his daughter back to life again. And so we find there that Jesus is bringing order from chaotic situations. He's injecting light into dark places. And he's bringing life where death reigns. Very much as with Genesis chapter 1 and verse 2. Let's get back to that text. Genesis 1 verse 2, the picture of a formless, empty, dark universe. God injected into that remarkable fine-tuning, staggering orderliness. You'll know the 19th century fairy tale, Goldilocks, where she went into the woods, encountered a lodge which belonged to the bears, and she found that after experimenting there was one chair that was just right, and one bowl of porridge which was just right, and one bed which was just right. God has created this universe in such a way that it is just right for human flourishing. In 2009, Professor Alistair McGrath gave the Gifford Lectures, and he reproduced those lectures in a book called A Fine-Tuned Universe. Now, what is remarkable about this universe is it contains many, many constants, values, which, if they were altered by the most minute degree, would not permit human flourishing, indeed human life at all. It's no surprise, really, that in the Judeo-Christian culture, there have been such remarkable advances in physical sciences. Because in the Judeo-Christian culture, wittingly or unwittingly, scientists are saying God takes the material world seriously. And what we're doing in our science is we're investigating the handiwork of God, thinking God's thoughts after him, if you like. Genesis 1 verse 2, a formless, empty, dark chaos. And what does God do? He brings about order, fruitfulness, and light. Where in a meaningful cosmos, relational beings, you and me, can flourish under God's divine kingship. As with the last lecture or talk, I'm going to give you something to ponder, reflect upon, or even discuss. Is this: where in the world, in our nation, in society, even in our own lives, personally, where do we need to see God's orderliness bring peace into chaotic situations? And further to that, how might you and I cooperate with God in that process? And a last thing to ponder, how might that reflect in our prayer life? Well, thank you for watching, and look out for further talks in this series, further videos in Genesis, the first 3 chapters. Thank you.